Uh, it's me, MJoy, and typically I go live to do music, right? But something that I realized in how my online community here is blossoming is that I'm learning that it's all good to be, these are my reading glasses, it's all good to be my holistic self. That is actually something that y'all can register, and you don't need me to just dumb it down and keep it like music only. Not to say dumb it down, but you know what I'm saying. I don't have to do that with y'all, and that is something that I really appreciate and that I so love about the community here. Something that feels really important to do. I've been dipping my toe into ancestral work, right? I'm just now starting. And it just so happens that my mom has been filled with this sense of purpose to help propel my great grandmother's work. Her name was Orchid Gerard, but even before then, like her maiden name is Talia Diana. But she named herself Orchid. She wanted to be called Orchid, so Orchid is how we shall call her. She loved the flower, and she was very suave mauve. This is art that a family member did for her memoir, The Devil Wore an Orchid. Okay? The situation with this is that, first of all, on my channel, y'all always ask about the books. And I love reading and I love books. So reading on here is also going to be something that I do, because it's just like, okay, if you come across my live, or if you are already a subscriber and familiar with my vibe and everything, and you want to roll with what I'm doing in the given moment, I want to read the books that I have, and I want to share that on live. So it would be like a live reading, and I don't have a book yet, but of the books that I have, I would tag them and credit the book, of course, in the title and everything. But I want to share books that are already published, already out, all that good stuff, right? In case you come across the video and you are interested, you can just like listen, kind of to audio book style experience, except it just be read by your favorite singer-songwriter, MJoy. So that's one of the things I'm going to fold into this channel. One thing that I did announce previously is that the book that technically I believe has been published now as well, The Devil Wore an Orchid by my great grandmother, Orchid herself, is something that we do want to create and make I think a audiobook officially eventually, and I would like to be the reader on that. But I thought, hey, I want to share this story with y'all because it's here's the thing, okay? And then I'll go into it. She was occupied by a spirit before. She felt that something or someone was talking to her in her mind. That's how she was experiencing it. And it drove her to make choices that, left to her own devices, she does not believe that she would have taken. So the story is very compelling, and she accounted for it. Now, what it led for her in her future sort of self-care and spiritual maintenance was a real leaning into Christianity. At first, she started out really enjoying her choices independently of any, hey, what's up? Hello, hello. Hi, Ellie. Thank you for being here. I'm going to start reading my great grandmother's memoir, and it's a trip, and I'm going to document it as many parts as it takes. Today is officially part 1. But yes, my grandmother was occupied by a spirit, and she documented the tale here. It did push her into Christianity. And I am just, I think that my own personal kind of editorial kind of opinion here is that, what's up, Haley? Oh my God. Okay, Haley, I'm glad. I know it's a trip, right? Because my thinking is just like, oh, there's such a push from like Christian dominant discourse and dogma and stuff to like not trust things like tarot practice, to not trust things even like your own instinct, right? I've talked to deep conservative Christians about this. They are against being in touch with their own instinct, um, because the fear is that it's too corruptible, right? We're not to be trusted ourselves. We need to throw our trust into an institution, into a church with a man who's in charge of the word there, and just like let him do the thinking so we don't have to do the thinking and the sussing out because we're too vulnerable on our own. I'm in a place where I am so grateful that I have, and everyone's different, this is a very personal thing, but that I have a very secure sense within my intuition. I feel divinely guided. I feel like I am an extension of what I feel comfortable calling God, but I absolutely understand that God is different and looks different and sounds different for everyone, and that's the beauty in it. And I don't need everyone to believe in the same thing I believe, just as long as we can be on the same page that we're all worthy. So my great grandma, with the resources that she had going on, she said, I need to dive into God and turn my life over to Christianity. And I can't imagine the fear, right, that she must have felt. And we're gonna hear it. We're gonna hear it. And we'll learn together. I have not read this book before. My mom did so much work to preserve the original transcripts, and she digitized everything that it's preserved now. And so my mom went through all this trouble to like print this out for me, and I told her my idea to share this on YouTube, and she was very supportive of it. I thought she was gonna be very much like, keep it all in La Familia, don't put this on the streams. But she supports this, so I'm glad to have her blessing, because I was probably gonna do it anyway, but I have her blessing, and I love that. So that feels like a divine alignment right there. I'm gonna get started reading here, but that is the background to this book. I'm in a place of feeling spiritually exploratory, and not beholden to a particular religion, but I do appreciate and understand that there's probably a lot of privilege to that, and also too, that people that feel connected and deeply rooted in their religion, that they feel privileged that they have that, and they feel bad for people like me that are just kind of willy-nilly out here speed dating different spiritual frameworks. Thank you so much. Actually, I'm really proud because Amanda Seals has these too, so I'm just like, woo, great minds. Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna get started here, y'all. This is The Devil, War, and Orchid, written by Orchid herself. Woo! Okay, and then we got some artwork here. I think this is a gentleman that helped my great grandma in a time of need. This is like a cool guy, so we're stoked about him. Okay, he was cool. Wow. Okay, and then here is a photocopy of a handwritten note. Not totally sure what's going on here, y'all, but this is quite the tale. Okay, let's go. Oh, here we go. And I see the hearts. Thank you for the love and support, y'all. We're getting into it. Okay, imagine if a movie was made from this. Let's do it. Let's make it, you guys. Okay, chapter 1, the Ouija board. Holy heck. Okay, I was actually raised to never play on the Ouija board, and I never did, because my mom was like, hey, our great grandma, she had stuff go down on the Ouija board. Now we're gonna hear what happened. Okay, so I still have never touched a Ouija board. Okay. The planchette zipped from one letter to another on the Ouija board and spelled out TED space BAKER Ted Baker. Orchid Germain's heart leaped with a throb of excitement. That name, could it be? Could it really be? She had just asked the board, is there hope for happiness in my life? Will I marry again? She had just divorced my great-grandpa. The board spelled Y-E-S. Then she asked, can you tell me the name of the man I will marry? And the board had shocked her by saying Ted Baker. What? She exclaimed. Tonight was her first experience with the Ouija. Outside, torrents of rain and wind lashed at the dark night, matching the turbulence of her heart. The working of the board shocked her. But it didn't matter. It had told her what she wanted to hear. Perhaps somewhere, some unknown power was watching over her, giving her a second chance for happiness. Still, what puzzled her was that it had said she would marry Ted Baker, the man she met 6 months earlier. There was no doubt in her mind of his sincerity when he persistently proposed marriage to her, then almost at the altar had let her down, vanished without a word, just 2 months ago. Puzzled and dismayed, she asked, how could it be? It was impossible to believe that a man of his character would have now the courage to come back and face her. The howling wind rattled the windows. Startled and a little unnerved, she shivered. She had always loved the rain, even looked forward to it. I'm the same way. But unless she could enjoy it with someone she loved, it would bring on spells of melancholia. Melancholia, I'm thinking, is an old school term for depression. Where did they all go? Where is everyone, God? She would ask aloud. Always alone these days. Memories of her past would reel before her like a moving picture. Putting the board aside for a while, she wandered about the room, which was always elegantly and tastefully furnished, occasionally picking up, gazing or fondling a small object or figurine. How she loved beauty. Beauty in everything, beauty in nature, in, the way it printed, it's a little messy. In man-made creations, in people. Oh yes, in people. She must always be surrounded with beauty. She really was like that, y'all. She gazed and reflected into the mirror. She was her own severest critic, but it comforted her to know that somehow she gave an overall beautiful image. She sighed as she remembered the many eyes of admiration that she would receive as she and Bob, her former husband, would enter the plush clubs of cafe society. Both men and women never failed to compliment her, even in her most casual attire. It was well known that her taste was exquisite. Her manner was always delicately warm. Her magnetic smile and charm would invariably draw crowds to her. I mean, did I inherit that at all? Bob would beam with pride, and she in turn admired his handsome face and physique. They had made a beautiful couple, and she knew that many times she set the pace in fashion. Sorry, y'all, bear with me while some of this stuff is smudged. She set the pace in fashion and was told by high fashion experts and designers that she was truly one of the best dressed women in her town. Many thought her the very best. Ooh. Her charisma would also attract children. Strange little waifs sometimes would Follow her and reach out to her. She asked one once, "Why are you following me? What do you want, darling?" The little girl looked up and shyly said, "You." She tenderly leaned over and kissed her and held her for a little while, her eyes glistening as she held back her tears. Somehow she saw another little girl, herself. Wow. Herself many years ago, when all the world was a star. It wasn't here, but she wanted so much to touch it. She walked out onto the veranda. The pace of the wind and the rain had subsided, and she breathed in deeply the fresh, cool air. In reviving her, it also brought her back reluctantly to the stark reality of her present life. She was becoming chilled. As she turned to go back, she gazed at the number 3 on Kent's door. Kent. There was no need to guess what he was doing. If only he were sober. I would ask him to come out and enjoy the rain with me. Oh Lord, what a pity. What a waste of beautiful manhood. Thoughts of him were disturbing. She shook her head and erased him from her mind. Back in her apartment, she wondered, where is Bob tonight? She knew that Bob would never be alone. Not him. The love of one woman was never enough for him. Does he still think about me when it rains? He had said he always would. Her mind wandered back to their youth and the carefree days before they married, and how they would walk, sing, and play in the rain like children. He was always so amused at her vivaciousness and instant wit. She enjoyed his excitement at her funny little antics, and she recalled the rainy November night while walking her home. He stopped suddenly and impulsively held her and kissed her tenderly. Then looked into her wide, deep blue eyes. "Little cherub, I'm going to call you Orchid from now on, because to me, you are as beautiful as the rare and delicate flower." No one had ever said anything as sweet and touching to her before. She felt warm tears trickling down along with the rain on her cold cheeks. As he gazed at her by the dim light of the street lamp, he gave her another long, tender kiss. Then they both laughed as they realized that they were getting soaked in the downpour. They ran the rest of the way. He never called her anything else but Orchid from that time on. That was his most precious gift to her, and she treasured it most of all. Now, they were divorced. She dared not dwell on the reasons. Once someone had asked her, "Tell me, Orchid, what could have happened after 22 years of marriage to break you two up?" She looked at him and chirped, "It would take 22 years to tell you." It was so like her to give the air of frivolity when the subject was too painful to discuss. Yet, there always remained a strong, unbreakable bond between them. They had 3 beautiful children. One of them was my grandma. But theirs had been a life only few knew about. She couldn't bear to dissolve the image that she had created for them. It seemed that she had spent a lifetime picking up broken pieces and rebuilding her little castles. Each time the foundation weakened. Then, when all seemed futile, she had met Hugh. Dear, handsome, beautiful Hugh. Well, all that seems so long ago. She mustn't think about it now. No. The memory of that love was more than she could bear at this time. If only, she thought. Fate had not been so unkind. I could have been spared these awful, heartbreaking experiences, these degrading humiliations. She fought to pry loose from her many unhappy memories. There were others, some very wealthy, some very modest means. The pattern was always the same: disillusionments, heartaches. Yet she would valiantly come back. And she was told, she would valiantly come back, always retaining her sparkling radiance. Wow, I am feeling so like I so mirror my great grandma in a lot of ways. Not all the ways, but in some of the ways. Wow. Once, when she was in a club, a former amour had professed great love and had promised her many happy things that he never meant to keep, and was observing with deep admiration. Then he asked her to dance. Always a lady and gracious, she accepted. And at the end of the dance, he said, "Orchid, what keeps you so everlastingly beautiful and vivacious?" She smiled and answered quickly, "Promises." Then turned and walked away, forever on stage. They never knew her pain. But Ted Baker, impossible. She remembered their short whirlwind courtship. She remembered the night that she met him, and with what great ardor and enthusiasm he approached her. And she had noticed him staring at her, smiling, for quite some time. She evaded his glances and occupied herself with casual conversation with some of her friends. Soon, Hal, her friend and owner of the club, came over and said, "Orchid, that gentleman over there, he's dying to meet you." "Well, that's nice of him, Hal, but I'm very flattered. Please, I'm not interested. I really don't want to meet him, and besides, I'm about to leave now." Okay, I'm just trying to see this print job. She attempted to rise and leave her table. "Orchid, listen, you can't turn him down." "Excuse me?" He's a multi-millionaire and a widower." Hal insisted. She looked at him surprised and said, "Hal, you know me better than that." "Just don't be foolish, little girl," Hal replied. "Excuse me, little girl? Oh my God." But at that moment, Ted was standing beside him with a broad smile of anticipation, waiting to be introduced. The inevitable happened. Orchid felt a little trapped. Though she enjoys the attention, she was far from being impressed. But as usual, she responded graciously and was attentive. While he unceasingly chatted about his position in life, industrialist, engineer, she silently wondered to herself, what is that? Being well-bred, she never pried. Her mind wandered as he continued on. I did the same thing. It went in all directions, but seemed to have lit somehow on her persistent financial problems. He was speaking of his home, one in Malibu, the other one in New York. His planes, his cars, his boats. She'd met others like him. She politely let him prattle on and pretend to be completely absorbed. And when he attempted amorous ventures, she exercised her delicate finesse and gently putting him in his place. Tired and somewhat bored, she made several attempts to leave, but he insisted. Even pleaded for her to stay a little longer, while he hurriedly ordered more drinks. Much later, he finally succeeded, but not without a struggle. It's giving non-consent culture. These are old school times right here, y'all. He escorted her into her car and begged for her phone number, but she refused. The following day, Ted called her. Ted, how the hell did you get her number? Okay, these are my editorials that I'm adding as I read this. She refused to give him her number. The following day, he called her. Okay. She was not surprised, as Hal knew her phone number and he was encouraging this union. After much persuasion, she finally consented to have dinner with him that evening. Wow. When she hung up, she sighed and she shook her head and asked, "Why did I do that?" Had he intuitively known? He beamed with pride and joy when he saw her. My dear," he exclaimed. "How very lovely. What an exquisite gown. Do you know how beautiful you look? You look like Marilyn Monroe." And she really did. He wasn't just like gassing her up. She really did look like Marilyn Monroe. She'd heard that before and was compared to a few other stars too. And he took her to one of the very fashionable and super plush clubs on the peninsula. Everyone knew him there and greeted him with a red carpet manner. The best was not good enough. The chef came to the table. They seemed to have oh gosh, y'all, I'm so sorry. There's edits written on here and I can't read that. Okay. Each and all eager to meet her. And he made certain that they all did. She was becoming impressed. Who really is he? Everyone complimented him and his excellent taste in women, and he was adoringly attentive and kept commenting on her lovely gown, which he, along with others, thought was for certain a Paris creation. She felt like Cinderella, knowing that her clothes temporarily... What? Temporarily? Oh! Got it. She felt like Cinderella, knowing that her clothes were mostly all her own creations. Flex, Grandma. They would be shocked, she thought, if they knew how little they cost. Okay, and I'm just going to say, I guess it wasn't in the culture back then to be like, "Oh, I made this." Because she kept that hush-hush, but I wish she told them. Like, bitches, this is me. No one in Europe made this. I made this. She also noticed what impeccable taste he had in his own attire. Now she was beginning to study him more. His stature had not come up to as a usual tall men that she was attracted to, and he seemed quite a bit older than her. He was pleasant looking enough, but not exactly her type. She invariably compared everyone with Hugh, and no one could ever meet his standard. But then, she sighed to herself, you can't have everything. Hugh, she thought, was everything. It was her impossible dream. When Ted overpowered her with all his attention and proposal of marriage, she wondered perhaps if she weren't making a terrible mistake by refusing him. Perhaps God had sent him to her knowing how insecure and lonely she was. Perhaps I could learn to love him, she thought. Knowing her nature could respond easily to kindness and consideration and love, and how wonderful it would be to never have to worry about finances. In an instant, she was fantasizing. She had visions of buying each of her children homes. Then she would scold herself to assume such an imposition on Ted. But she was playing with her wild fairy tale dreams. But a marriage like this would have merits, she reasoned, and she tried to shake off any doubts and misgivings that would continually punctuate each dream. She trusted the word of her friend Hal. He had verified that Ted indeed was reputable. Hi. Thank you for asking. I'm going to go ahead and pause and answer this question. You are a fan. You are a fan. Oh my God, I love that you're a fan. I'm a singer-songwriter that writes songs to save the world one song at a time. And that's great. That's great. Yeah. I mean, I guess we all are, right? We're all beings of God, so we all have that in common. So now that we have that squared away, I'm reading a memoir from my great-grandma, and I write songs about life in general to improve the human thinking condition. My grandma had a really intense experience with spirit occupation, and I've never read her actual words. I've heard the familial tales come down, but I have not heard it from her written word. So even though it's in the third person, she wrote this, and so I'm reading it. I don't listen to, there's a couple religious songs that I've like enjoyed, but I tend to like more worldly music. But if you have a band that you suggest, I'm happy to check them out. But my music is MJoy. I'm a published artist on all platforms. MJoy. Okay. So she trusted the word of her friend Hal. He had verified that Ted indeed was reputable, though he only saw Ted a few days out of the month as his business required extensive travel all over the world. He was certain Ted was all that he claimed to be, and he had never known anyone who had spent money so lavishly in his club and would host large groups of parties. Try as she may, she never completely convinced herself, and was quite surprised when she heard herself saying, "Yes, Ted, I have decided to become your wife." It was a great compliment, and I consider it an honor to be Mrs. Ted Baker. He had hoped that when he kissed her, she had hoped that when he kissed her, she would feel even a slight tinge of response, but she didn't. In time, she thought. In time. "You won't regret it, little lady. You'll see," he said with assurance. Now, how would you like a honeymoon in the Orient? Oh, that is some old school, outdated language there, y'all. He asked. But before she had time to grasp even the question itself, he said, "Good. You just pick a small overnight case, and I'll be here tomorrow at 2 o'clock, and you be ready. We'll be traveling for months, and I'll be having to attend to some business as well." "But how about this, my apartment?" she asked, gesturing with her hands, realizing her usual sophistication was slipping a notch. "Oh, just call the managers and tell them that you'll be paying them a year in advance. We won't have time to be worrying about the trivial things," he said, and he replied quickly. It was all too much to absorb at once. Her head was spinning, and she wanted to continue asking all the hows that came flooding into her mystified mind, but she could see and enjoyed immensely that he was a man that was full of command in all situations. No, I won't annoy him with such silly details," she resolved firmly. The rest of the evening, while she listened to more tales of his assiduous life, She was battling to anchor herself to reality. Her mind was whirling around outer space. And though it was a struggle, she retained an essence of composure. She had a keen sense of knowing what reaction would be more pleasing to the other person, perhaps to someone else. She would have demonstrated another orchid entirely. She would have jumped up and down with joy, screaming with delight, and thrown her arms around him to show her delight. She had never outgrown her childlike expressions of enthusiasm. She was forgetting for a moment with whom it was she was sharing all this. The realization was far from distasteful, but her heart longed for love. Was this her final destiny? Who knows? Next page. His final words to her that night were, "I'll pick you up at 2:00 tomorrow. Be ready. I love you, my pet." There was no sleep that night until the early dawn. There were plans, apprehensions, more plans, misgivings. What should I wear? Is he for real? Oh, I like how they said that back then even. Is he for real? He had asked her then, "Wait until I tell Julie, her daughter." What does he mean? Just an overnight bag? I don't want to be shopping right away. I must call the managers. Shirley's so sweet. She'll be happy for me. What did he say? Orchid, Orchid, why are you divorced? He had shaken his head. It seemed to have bothered him. Why he had said we'll be flying to Las Vegas first and be married there? I won't have time to shop, Orchid thought. Besides, it's Sunday. I'll pack a peacock outfit. I made it anyway, just in case. I don't know him well enough. He may even be mean. He does drink some. Who knows? Oh no, Hal said. He's a great guy. He did like the soft pink one, and I wore that one night with a delicate pink rose and the Malibu feathers, and I think I'll take that one too. He was so anxious for his children to meet me. Will they like me? I'll say a toast at the table, something about, I know that I could never replace your mother. Oh, I'll know what to say. I'm so tired. It's only 5 more days until Christmas. And what shall I do about these gifts? Juliet will have to take care of it. I just got to get some help. Yes, I'll sleep. Morpheus was not taking hold. She was drifting. So tired. The wheels were slowly coming to a halt. She sighed deeply. Maybe because he's a Catholic. And that thought never came back again. She was startled at the pounding at the door. But glancing at the clock, she was very grateful. 9:30 a.m. Oh dear, she thought, grabbing her robe. It's Kent. I've got time for him. What shall I... Oh, hi, Kent. Trying to be gracious. Big, handsome, lovable, and loud Kent. Hey, you gonna let me stand out here forever? He grinned. Oh, no. Come on in. Excuse me while I bathe myself, she nervously said, turning away from him. As she ran her bathwater, she yelled back at him, "Make some coffee. I'll be out soon." Oh, why did he have to come now? She cried. I haven't got time. I haven't got the time. He confuses me. What will I tell him? Kent was never 100% sober. But she could tell that he hadn't really started his drink-a-thon for the day yet. What am I going to tell him? Oh, Lord, how am I going to tell him? She fretted, and she hurriedly scrubbed herself. Theirs had been the kind of relationship that two lonely people usually develop, a need for each other. She had given him much, far more than she had intended, and she wanted to blot all that out now. He was an enduring, loving guy, and there was a good nature about him that afforded some much needed laughs for her. So fondly, she called him Mr. Therapy many times. However, when he was in an intolerable state, she would have nothing to do with him. There were scenes that she couldn't bear to think about. Then his sickness, always sick, his depressions, his resolutions, his hunger, tugging always at her heart. How did she get into this? She would despair. I don't need this. Sometimes weeks of silence. She would be determined never to speak to him again, and then perhaps after another disappointment from other sources, Kent, semi-sober, would show up, warm and lovable and promising to do right. Ain't that all how it goes with alcoholics? I mean, just the alcoholic disease, not judging people who drink, but just, or use, but that tends to be the dynamic. It's like very back and forth. If you would marry me, I'd have reason to stop drinking, he'd say. Oh, Kent, honey, that's very manipulative to say to my grandma. That's crazy. They both knew. They enjoyed each other's company, but she knew it wasn't enough and couldn't take him seriously. It would be disastrous, but she had become too weak to fight off his irresistible charm. There's so much good about him, poor darling. Somebody has to help him, she would sigh. Grandma, only he can help himself. Don't you love my commentary while I read this? But yeah, someone has to help him. Now she was faced with the painful task of telling him that she met someone else. No matter what had been between them, she felt certain that he also had understood that their romance had a dangerously weak foundation. As a matter of fact, she thought, it was a liquid foundation. Ooh, that's a bar. While Kent helped himself to coffee, she hurriedly tried to assemble her chosen wardrobe and personal articles that she may need in 2 traveling cases. Kent always knew that she enjoyed his comical way of teasing her. But this morning, she was not responding. She was hoping that he'd leave, and then just before she left, she'd go there and tell him, oh, well, I can't handle it, she thought, trying to think next of what else she should pack. Julie, I must call her, she reminded herself. Later, now, let's see, what else? She knew now that she was avoiding the moment of truth for Kent. She took a deep breath, put on a pleasant face, walked into the other room, wondering why this had to be so difficult. Though unspoken, they both had known that this day was inevitable. Sit down, Kent. I have something to tell you, she said kindly. It was against Orchid's nature to be anything but delicate when the bitter truth had to be told. She would never forget the shocked and painful look of disbelief that came over his face. For a while, he uttered no words. Her tenderness assisted him in his struggle for composure. It was easier knowing that he was at a loss for words. She didn't have the time to prolong this. What was so terrible about this? He had really loved her that much? Was it his pride? He'd found another girlfriend. If the tables were turned, what would he do? It hurt, but she knew only too well what he'd do. His magnificent build betrayed his true self. He had many weaknesses in his character. If it were not so, he would still be with his wife and family originally. He had been company during some of her many lonely hours, and they had played and laughed behind the doors of their unhappy past. Now the time had come, the turning point of her life, and at long last it seemed to be making sense. This had to be right, she thought. It's getting late. Kent stood up, somber, and excused himself. It's okay, honey. You deserve the best. What could I give you? He held her tightly, and then turned and went out the door. Orchid looked nervously at the clock. She didn't have time to react over this scene. Her head was whirling. Physically and mentally, she was scattered in all directions. This was a big package even for her well-organized mind. However, she had managed the impossible. In a short while, Kent came back and he was smiling, though he wasn't his jubilant self. One glance and she knew that the can of beer that he held in his hand was not his first for the day. She was glad to see him now. She knew that she was going to miss him for his affection that had sustained her through many bitter heartaches. He asked if he could help her, and she welcomed his assistance. Oh, Kent, she thought, what's going to happen to you? I'll leave him to God. Time was drawing near now, and she had called her daughter and informed the managers. Kent asked if he could sit and wait for her, or wait with her. She welcomed him heartily. It was always difficult for Kent to express himself sentimentally, but the time afforded the opportunity. He said, you know, little Peanut, I'll always love you, and I want you to know how much I've appreciated all that you've done for me. He stopped abruptly and choked down an oncoming sob. Oh God, she thought, this was going to be more than she could bear. The shrill of the telephone bell startled her. How she welcomed it. She ran to it, and it was only Julie asking her more questions. Orchid had instructed her to inform the others about her plans. When she returned, Kent had a fresh can of new beer in his hand. But it won't be long now, she thought. It would be nice if Ted would call in the meantime. Oh well, he's a busy man. He expects me to be ready, and I will be ready, she thought. She started a conversation with Kent so that it would not resume at the same theme. So she changed the subject. Though she succeeded, they were both well aware of each other's feelings. Kent looked like an execution was about to take place. And when the clock struck 2, she would have been able to see from her balcony that Ted drove up. Then Kent would leave as she planned. Why hadn't Ted called yet? Her hands were icy cold and trembling. Why couldn't she stay calm? Now it's 2:15. Now it's 2:30. The conversation had slowly dwindled to a dead silence. She could feel the oncoming of a raging storm within her. She fought desperately to dismiss the slightest doubt. Kent was an angel that day. He was showing a quality that she hadn't known before. He was a true friend. About 3:30 p.m., Orchid, becoming sick, said barely audibly, "I'm going to call his hotel, Kent." It took the greatest effort to do so. She bravely followed through. "Mr. Baker?" the clerk repeated. "Oh, yes. He checked in about 10 a.m. this morning." The receiver fell from her hands. She was numb. She felt Kent's arms around her. He assisted her back. Her agony needed no words. Her head was throbbing with pain. She couldn't fathom what was taking place. As usual, she was rebuking the truth. She appreciated Kent's connection and support, but she begged to be left alone. Ted Baker never came back. Nor did she ever know what happened. Now, 2 months later, his name appears boldly on the Ouija board. Orchid had secluded herself within the confines of her home. She could have survived that experience in itself, but it had served to break the camel's back. Life had dealt her an endless series of ruthless blows. Her spirit was finally broken. She hated it out there, she'd say. Having relived the whole bitter scene, she brought herself back to the present. Confusion again filled her. And could that be possible after all? He had mentioned working for the government, that there would be some things that were not to be questioned. She remembered becoming intrigued. But how could I accept him after this? She asked indignantly. The board. What does it know? Still, late night, that lady on Johnny Carson's show, everything the Ouija board had told her came true. It was just too impossible to believe. The night before Orchid had been so deeply depressed, she prayed to God, "Please take me. Don't let me go on like this. I cannot endure any more of this torturous life." That is wild to realize that that's how my great-grandma felt about her life. They always say that God never gives you more than you can take, she thought, but this must be my limit. She dreaded the endless sleepless nights. She cried herself a whole new ocean, she thought, and she had failed in her search for true love and monetary security. She was completely drained of physical energy, so that all she was capable of handling was that of a seamstress for a few ladies in the same apartment building. This in no way could sustain her. She depended wholly on Bob's promises to assist her financially until such time as she was strong enough to become independent. But with Bob's shaky pattern of life, she lived in constant fear. Her life with him had been a series of uprootings. Sometimes she lived comfortably. And other times in one-room shacks. He had directed his intelligence to illegitimate channels. The hardships and heartaches that resulted had finally taken their toll. Though he had admired her unbelievable display of courage and super strength, he now realized her frailty at this point and vowed to assist her while she needed him. After his last bout with the law, she had decided that divorce were to be the only solution. But during his incarceration, an avalanche of cruel hardship and heartache and disappointment nearly destroyed her. So that 3 years later, at his release, they decided to give their marriage another chance. And it was an intense need for each other more than what was between them before. Her love for him was that of father image, a protector that never left her. 8 more years, but somehow they were unable to mend that broken string of vital instrument that made their music. He thought that she had said it well in a letter. She thought that he had said it well in the letter that she had written years before when she had first decided to leave him. It's like this, Bob. You love and appreciate beautiful music, but you cannot carry a tune. I can. How then can the two of us harmonize? Oh, Grandma, that's a bar. Without realizing it, he was trying to make her sing off key with him. In her attempt to break loose from her painful thoughts and memories, Orchid turned on the television to the Johnny Carson show. And he was interviewing a well-known opera star. The first words from him that captured her ears were, "You really believe in such things, do you?" "Oh, yes. I wouldn't be anything without first consulting my Ouija board," the guest replied. Then she went on to relate the various experiences that the Ouija board had predicted. As Orchid listened, fascination crept over her. In these past few years, she was developing a strong curiosity for the supernatural. And this was not always prevailed. At first, it had been too unreal to hold her innermost. Too unreal to hold her interest for very long. But then she began to read her daily horoscope in the newspapers, and that led to her buying zodiac books. It took a while, but soon it was part of her daily routine to consult the predictions for each day. And it had been amusing, then fascinating, and then an uncontrollable urge to go to a spiritualist. Ooh. Try as she may, she could not dismiss this strong, compelling force. She had conflicting feelings about them. Somewhere she seemed to remember that it was bad to go to them, quote unquote. But after a long series of various illnesses, she had physical and emotional breakdown, in addition to the multitude of domestic problems that were creating a turbulent undercurrent in her marriage. She had to know what the future held. Was there any hope? Maybe they could tell me. Ooh, boy. Hold on. Let me make sure I didn't. Let me make sure I didn't skip this. You guys gonna do anything with that? First consulting. Okay, yeah. Okay. Now we're going into the next chapter here. I'll read for a little bit more. Madame Zorina the Palmist. Orchid had seen the name in various places, in newspaper ads and pamphlets, even on the bus benches, and it took a long while before she mustered up the courage, but she had finally gone to her. She remembered trembling as she entered this woman's house. It was small and dark with bright colored silk curtains. She led Orchid through a narrow, dark hallway into a reading room, which was sectioned off by purple velvet fringed drapes. The house had was permeated by a strong smell of incense, and as she entered the tiny room, she shuddered and wished that she hadn't come. How eerie, she thought. And at that moment, she turned and noticed a large, beautiful portrait of Jesus. Alongside of it was a small lit candle. She never understood why, but she thought it was very strange to see Jesus's picture there. Orchid felt uneasy and a little disturbed as she felt x-rayed by those dark, penetrating eyes that were studying her. Oh, why did I come? She asked herself reproachfully. She was a very pretty gypsy, but Orchid was frightened by her. Her first words were, "God sent you to me." Then after accepting the $5 fee, which back then I feel like was probably like $30, but I'm not sure. She rattled out a long recitation. I hope I'm saying that word right. Recitation. About Orchid's character and struggle in life. There was no expression on her face. And then through her monotonous voice, she made Orchid think that she had memorized it. While she continued on, Orchid was observing her typical gypsy garb and jewelry. And apologies, because gypsy might be like an offensive term now. I am just reading these words that were... I've never read this book before, so I don't know what to expect. We have gypsy, we have orient, so those two words are those are outdated, but just wanted to acknowledge that. I'm reading this in real time with you all for the first time. Just like the movies, she thought. She then heard her say, "You will be divorcing your husband, but don't worry, you will marry a wonderful, rich man someday, and you will have everything you ever wanted. This man is married now, but he will get a divorce too." Orchid's heart sank when she heard that. She would divorce Bob because at that time she was desperately trying to avoid it, and she hated the thought of divorce. Hi, Bella! Bella! Ani! Oh my god, sorry y'all, I am not in, hold on, let me. Oh my god, the algorithm has brought me here again. I spent some time with your music yesterday. Watermelon Nights is my favorite. It's definitely a mood. Yay, I missed the beginning context. But your grandmother who wrote it, one of yours. Hey, okay, yes. Oh my god, Ani and Bella, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. I'm sorry, I was so in the text that I just want to acknowledge y'all really quick. Absolutely, thank you for listening to my music and digging in. Watermelon Nights is one of my favorite songs that I've ever written as well. I really appreciate you. Yes, this is my great grandmother's words. She wrote it in third person, but it's her words. And it's about her experience becoming occupied by a spirit. She was very scared during this time, but she was able to survive it and write about it. Now, the interesting thing is that she was very spiritually porous boundaries and very vulnerable. So she leaned hardcore into Christianity, and that was the thing that helped her. And I am reading this, learning more about how the family has moved through difficulty. This is an educational experience for me. But yes, Ani and Bella, I remember both of you, absolutely, and thank you so much for being here. I hope you're hearing this, that I am recognizing y'all in the comments. I hope you're here for that. So yeah, this story is a freaking trip, and I'm gonna keep on coming back to it and sharing my grandma's story. I'm gonna find a place to pause in the story because right now it's getting a little juicy. She has just visited a palm reader for the first time, and the palm reader is saying, yo, you are gonna divorce your kind of wild ass husband and find a rich guy instead. But this rich guy in her orbit ditched her, and so she's finding it all very hard to believe. So let's see. She hated the thought of divorce. That first meeting with the fortune teller had taken place 13 years before, and since then she had made endless treks to her and many others that she could possibly contact. When she had exhausted those in her town, she went to seek others in neighboring cities, and everyone with the same promise. When some little things they had prognosed would materialize, it would encourage her and give her hope for the other things. Among the things that happened was Orchid's divorce from Bob. That's my great-grandpa. He was wild as hell, y'all. He really was. So that occurred 2 years after her first visit to the fortune teller. Once when she asked her why weren't the good things happening, the woman answered, Orchid, all these good things are in the stars for you, but there are some evil influences around you that are causing the delay. Wow. It was all too mystifying for Orchid. By Madame Zorina. Then Madame Zorina added, but there are always ways to hurry these good things along. By special ceremonies and prayers, you can pay me $350 and I can let it happen soon. That sounds predatory, Madame Zorina. She might as well have asked Orchid for $350,000, as at that time she did not have that amount for personal spending whatsoever. However, in a year's time, she somehow managed, and Orchid was hating herself for her weakness and would suffer from remorse and self-reproach. What was this horrible, compelling force that beckoned her to go to them? She'd despair. Nothing was happening, only more heartaches. The woman could never give any satisfying answers to why it wasn't happening. Only in time, she'd say. Finally, the day came when Orchid resolved never to go back to them again, and she didn't for several years. She also discarded all thoughts of her promises and tried to assemble her life the best way possible. It was during that time that she and Bob had resumed their marriage for 8 more years. And it was sometimes very happy and sometimes very miserable. Her inconsistency in all facets of his life kept her with the feeling that she was about to go over a precipice from a seesaw. Though now he no longer tampered with the law, thank God, he could not handle his business ventures wisely, which invariably resulted in a catastrophe. This kept her forever insecure and frightened. They programmed their better days as if they were there to stay, getting dressed and going out to dinners and dances that served more than to pacify her and gave her a false sense of security. And she was trying to live out her fantasies. and wanted desperately to be all that her illusion gave, but she hated plastic. It had to be real crystal. Gradually, she could hear the familial um, discord sounding louder. The song was the same, but once more the melody was off key. They parted amiably, and Orchid's song had ended, each verse a volume. Now, since that time, a year and a half later, she was beginning to lose all hope for happiness. Though she was still very attractive and had retained her petite figure. Okay, Grandma. She was well aware that time was becoming precious. This last shattering experience with Ted Baker had finally crushed her spirits and was now affecting her health. She became super susceptible to colds, and it was becoming a great effort to perform even the slightest activity. The presence of people would often stimulate Orchid temporarily so that they could not observe or become aware of her waning strength. She then gradually withdrew from all of her friends and seldom saw her family. One guessed that what was really happening to her. Kent was the only one who saw and that was aware because he was so close. And she would only accept his company up to a certain stage of his drinking. But he was mostly beyond the tolerable stage. When her loneliness became too unbearable, she would sometimes visit him and allow him to visit her. She knew only too well the hopelessness of that union. But her needs were so profound, and she would succumb momentarily to whatever was in the offering, and the significance was obvious when she would playfully call him Big Daddy. Oh. But all too often, she became the mother symbol to him. She wanted to run, to escape, and she felt so devastatingly helpless. Now, it seemed that the angry storm outside was lashing out in these last days of February as though it had been displeased with all that it had observed. Chilled and trembling, Orchid raised the thermostat and covered herself with a lap robe. Resuming her questions on the Ouija board, she asked, "But when will Ted Baker come back?" Moving with more speed now, it spelled out March 23rd. "You mean next month?" Excitement began to stir within her after it shot up a yes. It swiftly started to spell out, "Go to Kent. Go to Kent." It repeated. Baffled, she hesitated. Then she asked, "Why?" Again, it repeated, "Go to Kent. Go to Kent." She became somewhat annoyed, and she had known that he was in no condition to be dealt with or bothered, but a strong feeling of her foreboding crept over her, and she found herself rising and going to his studio apartment. When he didn't answer her knock, she slowly turned the knob, and it was unlocked, and in an instant, she was engulfed in a whirl of thick gray smoke. The gust of wind that entered with her instantly ignited certain spots in the blankets on his bed. Choking and coughing, she gasped out, "Kent! Kent! Where are you? Kent! Oh my God! He killed himself? Kent? Kent? Groping in the dark, she finally found him. Then she ran into the kitchen and filled the pot of water and ran back and threw it over him. She had heard him grunt and cough, and she frantically pulled and tugged at him. Help, help! She was struggling to yell, but the smoke was choking her. So it stifled her screams. Dazed and in a stupor, Kent stood up, coughed, and uttered some incoherent words. She hurriedly guided him out of the door, and she managed somehow to wake another neighbor who called the fire department. They were there for a few minutes, and while the others were being alarmed, she wrapped a blanket around Ken and was drying his head with a towel. The fire had not destroyed all of the articles, but sufficiently damaged enough. For a couple of hours, it was utter confusion and bedlam. Later, in her apartment, after seeing Kent's needs and giving him some hot coffee, she made him realize that in his drunken state, that he had fallen asleep with a cigarette in his hand. And he sat in her warm room, still dazed and very silent, too ashamed to speak. During the crisis, she had kept her head, but now she broke down and cried, sitting on a stool by his feet. And she put her head on his lap and sobbed, "Oh, Kent, Kent, you could have died. Why? Why did you do this?" He looked pitiful, and for a long while he did not speak. Then he quietly asked, How did you know?" She had completely forgotten about the Ouija board. She didn't want to be explaining about it just yet, so she evasively answered, I didn't know. I just had a feeling." As she arranged the couch for him to sleep on for the night, she wondered, how did the board know? That's strange. She slept fitfully that night, and after tossing restlessly for hours, she finally decided to put the light on and see what the board had to say. This time, she didn't speak to it, but as she put her fingers on it, it spelled R-E-S-T, rest. She smiled and she thought, well, how sweet. After she put the lights out again, she wondered what would have happened if I hadn't seen Johnny Carson's show last night and had not gone out to purchase a Ouija board today in the first place. She then thanked God. Okay, so y'all. Okay. Y'all, that is where we are gonna pause it. This has been really fun to share, and I was not expecting to get into it as much as we did today, because I went well over an hour. But I just want to thank everyone who popped in. Thank you so much for engaging with the video. You know, it all really, really helps, and I appreciate you, and I cannot wait to continue on with this story, okay? I'll come back in here and I will play more music, but I just had to share this story about my great grandma and her wild life. And so we'll keep on chipping away at this story as well. Thank you so much.